Wayne, are you able to see the chat?
I certainly can. Beautiful. Hello,
So,
Michelle. So that's a good friend of mine.
Yes, I was going to mention that, and while we're waiting for everyone to filter in, so you spent some time with Michelle, mentoring and helping her through her process, or her creative process. So that's really awesome. And Michelle Grace Hunter is an amazing person to listen to her talk. So Michelle, lovely to have you here tonight.
Yeah, it's many years ago we met each other a long time ago. One of my most memorable wedding shoots was her and Jarvis's wedding on Black Saturday many years ago, and I'll never forget the church, how hot it was when everybody was jam-packed in this gorgeous church. It was, I think, 48 degrees.
Yep, remember that day?
You remember that day?
Yeah, yeah, it was very memorable.
It was, and I'll never forget it because we had the reception down at Flemington Racecourse, and I said to the bridal party, I said, what a great shot it'll be. This is, the sun's going down, the light's beautiful. Let's all go out to the racetrack near the finish line. And what we'll do is you'll run past the finish line and you'll jump up and we'll grab a beautiful photo. And we all, oh, wonderful one. It was so warm. Just as we got out there, a freak storm came past. Can you imagine all the ash in the air?
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, wedding dress, not so white anymore. but I think Michelle's forgiven me.
Of course she has. Rocco, were you shooting a wedding on that day?
I was, and I'll never forget it because, one, obviously because of the heat, but we were in the Carlton Gardens, and we just arrived there with the bridal party and the family for some family photographs because the church was just up the road. And just as the wind picked up, just as we're about to walk across, this massive branch of the tree opposite the path just came over and almost collected all of us. So it was time to kind of get back in the cars. And I said, what a great idea. Let's go and do some shots at the reception maybe. And that was it. That was the end of the shoot. It was just, yeah, it was pretty scary. And then it got really dark. And as Wayne said, ash falling from the sky. And it was made for some pretty dramatic, cloud formation.
Well, we were in Africa. I flew to Africa about 2 days before then, so probably the Thursday or the Friday, and was out of the country for that. And then these last fires we had through the tail end of last year, I was out of the country for a fair chunk of those as well. So if I book a flight to go overseas ever again, it's a bad omen, I guess, or maybe I should fly in the winter time or something.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Mother Nature.
I said this before, Wayne. I think tonight's talk would be a wonderful talk around a campfire somewhere with a Billy tea or something like that. So I'm looking forward to it. And certainly the conversation we're having now, I think, could be just a big part of that. So looking forward to tonight. We might kick off. I've got a little bit of an intro that I do. First of all, I just want to introduce Rocco, and then Rocco will let you take over and introduce Wayne. There are still people that are filtering into the Zoom call, but that's okay. We are recording the call as well, so those people that come in later won't miss anything. They will get to see tonight's full session. So shall we kick off?
Sounds wonderful.
Okay. Well, welcome everyone to Nikon's The Next Chapter. My name's Chris Dalton and I'm Professional Markets Manager at Nikon Australia. And joining us tonight, we have two amazing guests. First of all, the guest that I want to introduce who will be hosting tonight's show is the amazing, super talented Master of Light, Rocco Ancora, Nikon Ambassador. Shall we go on?
No.
Rocco has a long list of awards, much longer than we've got time for tonight. But one of the key things that I like and I value about Rocco is Rocco is also a very good friend. So there's Rocco, who is the Master of Light. Rocco is the Nikon Ambassador, but also a great friend of Nikon and a great friend to us personally. So Rocco, welcome for tonight. Thank you very much for hosting tonight's session. We look forward to listening, and I'm going to sit back in the question and answers section. Just a bit of back-end housekeeping. You'll notice there's a Q&A section. The Q&A section is where you put questions, which those questions will be for Wayne to answer directly. if there's any other general chat or chit chat, just put that in the chat section. You'll see that that's nominated by a little speech bubble, but the Q&A section is what I'll be managing in the background. Any questions that are directed directly to Wayne, please put them in there. We'll try and filter them as best we can. If you like a question that someone else has put in there and you want that to go to the top of the pile, just vote on it by clicking on the little thumbs up icon, and that'll push it to the top, or at least the popularity will push it to the top. So without any further ado, and one other thing I need to say is tonight after the session, I'll also be sending you a link, an email. There will also be a link that will come later on, which will be the link to the YouTube. That YouTube recording generally comes out within 5 to 7 days after the event. Therefore, if you don't want to take any notes tonight and you want to sit back and relax, you can do so, and then look forward to viewing the YouTube link later on. But over to you, Rocco. Lovely to have you here, and thank you very much for doing tonight's session. Thank you.
It's an absolute pleasure, Chris, and it's a real honour tonight to be doing this. Presenting such an incredible artist. Adjunct Professor Wayne Quilliam. Do you prefer Professor or do you prefer Photographer, Wayne? What should we call you?
I think we'll go Photographer, but I think it's a little bit too formal, Professor.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So Wayne, for people out there who are not familiar with Wayne, he's one of Australia's preeminent Indigenous photographic artists, curators and cultural advisors. And of course, he's been working internationally everywhere. I mean, his awards and his career include the NAIDOC Indigenous Artist of the Year. That's pretty amazing. Human Rights Media Award and the Walkley Award for Photojournalism, including being nominated as a Master of Photography by National Geographic. Wow, that's pretty amazing. He was a recent finalist in the invitation-only Prix Pictet in Paris. I hope I pronounced that right.
I think you did right.
In the Bowness Art Award. The most amazing thing about this man, I don't know where you have time to sleep, because you have created and curated over 220 exhibitions throughout the world, and you've been published, mate, in more than 1,000 magazines, in books, newspapers, and so on and so on. Tonight, we are honoured to be hosting you, and we are honoured to hear your story, and certainly the stories behind these amazing images that you've captured throughout your career. So, Wayne, welcome.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate the opportunity, and it's great to welcome everyone here tonight, and hopefully you enjoy our session and have a bit of a chat. And please, there's no question that I won't answer. It's a beautiful opportunity to share not only my knowledge of culture, but also my limited knowledge of photography, if I could say that.
Fantastic, mate. So let's start at the very beginning. Who is Wayne Quilliam?
Yeah, what I'd like to do, rather, is that generally as an Aboriginal man or within our culture, is what we like to do is we always like to offer what's called either a welcome or acknowledgement to country. Now, for those who don't know, that was a traditional welcome to ensure that when you're on somebody else's land, you acknowledged where you were and that the local tribe knew that you're on their country. Because this is not my land, this is, I'm originally from Tasmania, I offer acknowledgement and pay respect to the elders, past and present, and to our emerging young ones that are coming through. And thank you for allowing me to live on your land and be a part of this country. But as I said, Rocco, I grew up as a young man in Tasmania back in the 60s and 70s, and escaped and joined the Royal Australian Navy as a 15-year-old. So very little formal education, just had that wanderlust of wanting to know what was out there, because back then there wasn't the internet, there wasn't, we had a couple of television stations and that's all I knew of the world. And I always saw photography as maybe that opportunity of, you used to read on your paper run, you'd look through the magazines and go, wow, the world is so large and so beautiful. I want to know more about it. So joining the Navy allowed me to get out and explore.
Wow. That's incredible. So then photography, what sparked, the creative journey in photography? Was it photography at first or was it other mediums?
Yeah, it was. I had this thing about it, is I really did want to engage. I wanted to know more about the world, and I remember one night we were on what was called the paying off tour of the last Royal Australian Navy aircraft carrier, the HMAS Melbourne.
Yep.
And we were docked in Hong Kong harbour, and that was back in the beautiful old days of duty free. And we were over in Kowloon, and I think, had a couple too many frothies one night, and I walked past one of the windows late at night and saw these beautiful cameras, glistening in behind that window. And my shipmates apparently told me I went in, bought it back to the ship and cuddled it like a baby. And waking up the next morning realising that I'd bought myself a camera. Had very little knowledge of how to use it. I basically taught myself, started taking photographs of life on board a ship. And then as we started to travel around the Pacific to Japan and the Melanesia and places, I found it interested me more to actually take photos and go out and interact culturally than to actually go out and do what a normal sailor does. And the passion grew, but it sort of ebbed and flowed over the years because, earning a living back there was, my job was a sailor, not so much a photographer.
Fantastic. Well, we're excited to see your pictures. So, mate, just share your screen and take us through your journey.
Let's bring him up here, bud. And double click. And forgive me for 2 seconds, as we were talking before, is that I love technology. I've just got to get it to working. Excuse me, I've got a little bit of a cough, so excuse me. Okay, what we're going to do, Rocco, is I'm going to start on these images here, bud. And the first one, this is the reason I brought up the first images is that, again, I should have done this during our acknowledgement of country. Oh, it looks like it's taken off on me. Can you forgive me for a second? I must have it on automated.
Just take your time.
Let's go to slideshow. Let's go back a couple. There we go. So this is I live about 50 kilometres outside of Melbourne. Like I said, on Wiradjuri country. And this is the land I live on. I'm a freshwater man, so originally from Tasmania. And that was the instance of showing this beautiful storm that come in a few weeks ago over the hills. And we the landscape is such a beautiful thing to view, but we see the land as more of a connector. Our tribal groups are broken up into freshwater, saltwater, mountain, desert, and a variety of other things. So that's how we associate ourselves with culture. And also the seasons. The seasons, we don't have the typical 4 seasons. Some of our communities have anything up to 12 seasons. So that's not so much going directly from summer into autumn, but a progressive series of how we get to that particular different weather time is we watch the animals, we watch the trees, we watch the sky. So as not so much a landscape photographer, but as somebody that sees landscape photography is a whole different process.
Fascinating.
This one here, this is an important image to me, and I won't go on to each of them for too long because there's so many stories, but I see storytelling in community is so important. This photograph here is I was the photographer for the Apology, a very important event for not only our people, but for all Australians. And the photo that you see behind the group there is a woman called Dr. Marika. And Dr. Marika was a significant woman in getting the apology and reconciliation for all Australians. And I had an exhibition at Parliament House in Canberra. And 12 months later, we wanted to take it out bush. We wanted to take it out onto Dr. Marika's land, which is, she's a Yolngu woman, which is Arnhem Land up in Northern Territory. And the difficulties of doing that is generally when somebody's passed away is that we, in a lot of our communities, not all, but a lot of our communities, is a photograph or a resemblance or a name is generally put to one side and sat away for people to grieve properly, to look after the memory of that person. And sometimes it can take a year, 5 years, even 10 years before the family and the clan groups will allow the image or the name to be used again, I still refer to her as Dr. Marika. But on this special occasion, because she was such a significant woman, that we sat down with all the clan groups of the Yolngu and asked whether we could bring this particular exhibition to the Gama Festival and have her image up on display out bush. So this is actually out on the Gama Festival, which is outside of Yirrkala. And this is her family, and they were so proud to have her image along with the rest of the images from the apology on public display. And one quick side note, which I think people might find very interesting, every morning I'd come in and we had people looking after this exhibition, and the people that were looking after it said, oh, listen, Wayne, we're really sorry, but the photograph's covered in dust. A lot of dust, because up there it's all bauxite, and the people are touching the image. And what happens in particular with Yolngu culture is putting the hands underneath the armpits and on the forehead to touch the sweat and then touch the photograph. And we decided that it was inappropriate to clean the photo because that was the connection that our communities or the Yolngu community had with Dr. Marika. So wow. It was a beautiful, beautiful thing.
Wow, it's amazing.
So every photo's got a story, and I'm still getting used to this, brother. So
that's all right.
I'm gonna, everyone out there, you'll see just how technically inept I am. And this is going to be jumping around, so I'm going to have to. You want to ask me something about that last one, Rocco, or any of the images, or is anything interesting so far?
No, I mean you're doing fine, mate. Just you know, images that you know, we're here to hear. We're here to listen to your story and the stories behind your pictures, which I think that's the most interesting part, because you know, a picture tells 1,000 words, but what are those words? You know, what are your words? You know, why do the pictures exist in the first place? And that's probably the real key in your art, I think, Wayne.
Yeah, thank you, brother. I appreciate it. First and foremost, I must show this photo of my beautiful wife and daughter. Exhibition we had at the UN in New York, and yeah, without these two, and I've got an extended family who all live back in Tassie. This is my son, my oldest son Nathan, who is also an aspiring photographer, and he joined me on the night that I won what I would consider as probably the most prestigious award as an Aboriginal person can get, which is called the NAIDOC Award, or NAIDOC Artist of the Year. So to have my son there that night was extremely special. And we all have family and we all love them, but it's for them to share the journey is an incredibly powerful experience. I'm sure you've experienced the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, there's nothing better than sharing moments like this with family and the people that mean the most to you. So this would have been an incredible moment for you, Wayne.
No, it was, brother, it was. So we'll go on. And what I wanted to show people is that typically with Indigenous culture, people expect to see typical blackfellas out in the bush. But, you know, we've got these young kids that are just up in the Shepparton area, you know, light skinned, but still as Aboriginal as anybody. We've got these young ones up in Central Desert, they're, you know, proud of culture, proud of who they are, the you know, dark skin. We've got our brothers and sisters from the Torres Strait, an incredible group of people that have their own culture but are so entwined within our culture and so accepting. It's like a two-way street for us. And what you see here is that I cover a lot of our festivals over the years. And this is a Torres Strait Island man that was performing at the Dance Rights Festival up in the Opera House in Sydney. And funnily enough, this year, instead of being able to get there and perform, all the dances are all done online on Zoom calls. It was hilarious.
Yeah, we've all done a bit of Zoom lately.
We have, and some of us are good at it, and some of us not so much.
We're still trying to find our feet. So
we are, brother, we are. So we go from the beautiful Torres Strait into Central Desert, and This one here is in what's called the APY lands, which is south of Alice Springs. And I'll never forget this story because I was out there working for the National Gallery. And I was out there to document a special songline, a storyline called Seven Sisters. Seven Sisters is quite an intricate story, so I won't go too much into it. But we're out in a remote area where the women were practicing, and we were documenting it. And we had a significant non-Indigenous crew out there, and the old ladies come to me and said, "Wayne, no more ceremony today, no more photos, no more videos. We've got important work to do tomorrow, so we've got to stop." And you know, having a non-Indigenous crew, they were going, "Well, we can't just stop. You know, we've come all this way." I said, "No, if the old ladies have said stop, we're on their country." And it intrigued me because they got such a, as you can see, such a beautiful cheeky smile, and I wondered what they were up to. The next day was actually the grand final. So we pulled up from doing, photographing, culture in one respect, and then arriving the next day where the ladies all put their hats and their blow-up bulldogs, little hand to watch them celebrate football, which is really another cultural event these days.
Wow, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Just on that, Wayne, I mean, you get to photograph these incredible communities that are unseen by most of the rest of Australia and the world. There's a question here by one of the attendees. Many images are unseen before for Javier. He remembers hearing that there are areas in Australia where Aboriginal people can only be photographed by authorised personnel. Now, if this is true, can you talk about that for us? I know what the answer is, but Wayne, can you share a little bit about that?
For sure. From my perspective, it's quite fluid. And I'll go from I've been, as an Aboriginal man and been working on basically near on every community in Australia for the past 30 years. I still treat going on to each community, even though I know a lot of the people really well. I know the communities. I always let them know before I get there to say that I'm coming out. I always let them know the purpose that I'm going out for. And sometimes it gets lost in translation with anything. But I take the view is that when you're out on, in particular our remote communities, you need to make people aware that you're going out and for the purpose that you're going out for, because it'd be like me coming into Melbourne and coming into Brunswick and then just jumping in everyone's backyard and start taking photos of the kids in the pool, or the old people having a cup of tea in their lounge room. It's the same for our people. This is out on country. So I suggest to people is that what you need to do is offer respect. If you have respect for who you're photographing and who you're interacting with, you'll generally find that a lot of our people are really receptive to having their photos taken. But you'll also know within your own self-respect is that when people don't want their photos taken, you've really got to back off and not push things too far. But what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, I had the privilege of photographing an assignment out in Uluru years back, and it was fascinating. Before I actually even took the first photograph, sitting down with one of the elders and taking us through what was appropriate and what wasn't appropriate, and the stories about the land. And it was an eye-opener for me. It really was, Wayne, because the respect that the culture has for the land is extraordinary, and it's and it's all about respect. But also, you tie into that the sacred sites, which are everything to the Aboriginal way of life. So, but I think it really comes down to that word you said earlier, respect. Respect is everything, and at the end of the day, you don't just walk into someone's backyard and just start taking photographs. And this is, this is their land.
It is very much so. And that's exactly, as an Aboriginal photographer, I treat it the same as as a non-Indigenous photographer should do. Know why you're going there, why you're shooting, and letting people know. So, no, great question. Great question.
A fantastic question.
So we'll go along, and the reason this is a very important photograph to me is because this is a lot of the time my work is very fluid. Is that I go out with on a gig for somebody. Maybe it could be for a corporate, it could be for a community. But in particular, for those who are aware, there's quite a famous photographer called Jimmy Nelson. Jimmy's an English photographer that's based out of Amsterdam. And Jimmy contacted me, he said, Wayne, he says, I would really love to include your people in the new book I'm doing. But we're having problems, accessing, the right communities. And exactly what the question was asked from before is, how do I go about this? And I said, listen, I'm more than happy to assist. So what I did is I contacted 2 different communities in Western Australia, and we set up a series of shoots in a small community called Mowagen, which is north of Broome, and then another one, again, north of Broome, but on a different peninsula. And as we were driving out, getting ready to do the shoot, a countryman is our terminology for another Aboriginal person, said, oh, brother, they're doing a launch today of the first ever fully Aboriginal owned and run airport in the world. I said, what do you mean? I said, yeah, you've got to drop in and grab some photos. And I said to Jimmy, I said, oh, you don't mind, brother, but if community calls, you're obligated to go. And he said, no, this is fantastic. I'd love to go. I'd really love to see how this works. So we come in and they said, oh, brother, can you just grab some photos of, to show the opening of the airport. So these two young fellas were kind enough to take me out on the tarmac, and they're doing what's called hot refueling. So they needed to build an airport that was for the people to go out to the gas rigs. And it was just one of those off-the-cuff type of shoots that was really important to community. And my whole ethos is ensuring I look after community. So, and it's exciting too, rather, to get out there, choppers going, and being out there with quite a well-known photographer too, to experience it. So it's all storytelling.
Awesome. Got another question from Mark. Now, your work, Wayne, sparks a lot of conversation with people at exhibitions. Now, what Mark wants to know is, do you take photos with the intent of trying to understand a culture through what people's comments are about a particular image? Is that your main motivation, or is it the other way around?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question that, I'll be honest, hasn't been posed to me before. Exhibitions are an after product. I generally don't shoot for a particular exhibition. I have in the past done some commissions with like the United Nations and Department of Foreign Affairs and some corporates, but the majority of the time I'm asked to go out and do a particular shoot. And then when I do, is that sometimes I'll come back and I look at it and somebody goes, you should really share this with the world. You should create a show that, we can basically showcase Indigenous culture, the reality of culture, more so than the glorified typical shots of just ceremony, just blackfellas painted up the way they are. So a lot of the shows do come about by being out on community all the time, experiencing what happens. I learn culture every day. I didn't learn culture when I was growing up as a young man, because in Tasmania we didn't have a lot. But now the majority of the culture I've learned is from spending a lot of time out in these areas. So I'm not sure if I answered the question in the right way, but that's...
So do you think that by photographing the culture, do you gain a better understanding of a particular culture through imagery?
Most definitely. It's a unique pathway. It's a unique opportunity to get into places and to interact with people in a symbiotic relationship in a way, because it's ensuring that you inform the people of what you're doing. They love to share. And when there's a mutual sharing, I come back and I share it with my daughter, who in turn shares it with her schoolmates at school, who in turn, the cycle continues to go on. It's the only way it's the way that our traditional people share culture anyway, except without a camera. The old ways of sharing culture and sharing knowledge was through dance, through art, through language and song, and through painting. So the camera is really a modern version of cultural continuity.
Fantastic. Great answer.
Thank you, brother. Now, this one I had to show because these are young Aboriginal men and women from all over Australia, and they've graduated from high school going into university, higher education, and this was down at Luna Park in Sydney. And instead of getting the standard photos of everybody just standing there, I said, "Come on, you lot, how do you feel?" Next thing you know, they are celebrating in the way, they're celebrating with such joy that I just had to capture the essence of who they are and where they're from. And this just makes me so happy knowing their stories.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah, there's a lot of happiness and energy in this particular image.
Very much so, Russ, very much so.
And just on that, there's a perfect question for it by Vanessa. Vanessa is an historian of East Timor, and she's studying the impact of photography on photographic subjects, the East Timorese in her case. And now, until recently, she's lived in Larrakia land in Darwin. Now, your photos, Wayne, show really diverse images of Aboriginal people that are positive, which is what this image is, vibrant and complex. Now, what do you think has been the impact of photography on Aboriginal subjects here in Australia?
Ooh, that's a double-edged sword. And it's one I'm quite willing to wield in such a manner, is that, and I have a unique view on life. I think life is incredible. I think the people that I've had the privilege of not only working with, but develop beautiful relationships. I now consider I have so many friends that I see our culture as vibrant, as connected, as so positive. I've got a lot of images that show the opposite, and I've been asked numerous times by media to share these particular images of the negative sides of our communities, and put it bluntly, the snotty-nosed black kid sitting in the dirt with a dog sitting next to them looking forlorn. And I've had major newspapers, in particular their photo editors, basically ask me for those type of images, which I refuse to share on the premise that if you've got a story that needs to be told, is that don't go accessing somebody else's images, go out and do your research and photograph it and tie the story directly with the photo, with being knowledgeable of what that story is. For all we know, that snotty-nosed black kid that was sitting in the dirt could have possibly been out just playing, happy as Larry, well cared for, well fed. But I just find negativity in imaging is not what I do. And I have been criticised before many, many times. And I'm prepared to continue to be criticised because I think positivity is something that can bring people a new essence, a new level of what could be.
And I think as photographers, Wayne, even documenting, different cultures, it all comes down to perspectives. Would you agree? I mean, how you choose to see it. What eyes are you looking at it through? Is it a negative eye? Is it a positive outlook? Because that makes a huge impact on what you photograph and how you photograph it.
Very true, yeah. And that's even without being, my non-cultural shoots, when you're out there and the essence of how you view it and sometimes the misconceptions. I was recently doing a commercial shoot on roadworks out in East Gippsland. And I went there, and I'll be honest with you, I thought, photographing trucks and graders and men working on a rail or a bridge is not quite artistic. But you know what? Once I got there and I started having a chat with these guys and where they come from Queensland, Western Australia. They're working on with these big, beautiful big drills. All of a sudden, the interest sparked up, and it changed my view on how to take the photos. It was brilliant.
Yeah, it's amazing.
It is. So I'll just pop across to the next one. Yeah. Now, this one, and again, apologies, this is out of order, but this is Dr. Marika. Young Maui Hosh, an Aboriginal girl. She is the daughter of a really good friend of mine, and she's just so young Marley were, sorry, I'll go back. Young Marley is Tanya Hosh's daughter. So Tanya Hosh is the AFL social inclusion, I think officer is the wrong word, I think executive. And she's actually just won South Australian of the Year. And the funny thing about it, I won't go fully into this image because it's a long story, it's a beautiful story, it was at the apology. But quickly what had happened is that we'd come out of the Prime Minister saying, apologising to our communities. They'd, the Prime Minister, the opposition leader and all the dignitaries had come off the stage and they're all in amongst the throng of celebrities and well-wishers. And young Marley was kicking up a bit of a fit. And Dr. Marika, she sat down and where the Prime Minister had been sitting and looked up at Tanya, just nodded. Tanya gave her Marley. Marley sat in her arms and fell asleep. And it was that grace and beauty of Dr. Marika, one of the probably the most important person at Parliament House that day, having that beautiful essence to go, I'm going to look after this little one. And the funny story is only recently, when you have your photo taken for Australian of the Year and there's a touring exhibition of it, instead of Tanya putting her photo in, this is the photo that she's chosen to include in that show. It goes, photos can go a lot of different ways.
Yep.
So we'll pop onto this one. Football. Who doesn't love football? I was Richmond's photographer for many, many years back in the dark days. Unfortunately, it's but these here I love. This is up on the Tiwi Islands. And I love to be involved in our communities. I'm not a photographer that sits back and doesn't become involved. I don't insert myself. I don't put myself in the way of others to celebrate or to hinder culture or to be. As you see, it's a very low shot. I was basically laying on the ground looking up to ensure that everyone could celebrate and do what they do. And the journey of this photo itself is just brilliant. And this mob here actually from the community of where Maurice Rioli, a famous AFL mad Richmond legend, comes from. So I was deeply honoured to be able to photograph the Tiwi Grand Final.
Oh, fantastic.
Who do you follow, Bud, or do you follow?
I follow the Hawks.
Ah, well, you've had a good few seasons.
Yeah, everyone mentions, the 80s and 90s, but it's Richmond's time now, which is great.
It is. Footy's a passion, and that's why I shared this one. This one here is also very special to me because I work for the Cathy Freeman Foundation. Cathy has this amazing organisation which goes out and basically works in a lot of our remote communities to help with education. And the funny story behind this is on a very, very small community called Elko Island, which is, I think it's about a couple hundred k's off of Yirrkala in Arnhem Land. And the ladies asked Kath if she'd go for a bit of a run later on out the back way so the kids didn't humbug Kath. So we went out there, this road out, way out of the community. We're standing at the crossroads waiting for the ladies to arrive. And Kath and I were standing there next to the troopy, or full drive. And I said to Kath, can you hear that, sis? She goes, what is it? And I said, it sounds like munchkins. We could hear this noise. We could hear this noise. And now all of a sudden at the top of this crossing road, out of the jungle basically, these kids come running down the road because they'd heard Cathy Freeman was running. And she's hiding behind me. And she's laughing and screaming like a 10-year-old with watching these kids running towards her, wanting to run with Cathy Freeman. And it brings back beautiful memories of community.
That's awesome. Now, at the start of this session, you mentioned that you're from Tasmania, so a different country to where you're living in now, a different Aboriginal country. So, as you move from different Aboriginal countries throughout Australia, do you find it difficult to portray each culture, or how do you connect?
Yeah, I'll be honest, I don't have trouble. I find it quite easy and quite fluid, because if I don't know somebody in a particular community, I'll know somebody that does. And the beauty of social media these days is I can put up a post. I go, okay, Bob, I'm coming out to Sejuna, or I'm coming out to Yallata, which is a community out in the Nullarbor, and I need to, this is the sort of shoot that I'd like to do. Who knows somebody? And all of a sudden, Facebook, Insta, messaging, they'll all come in and go, oh yeah, talk to Uncle here. He'll set you up with somebody, or you know somebody in this community who's got cousins in that community. So there's always a link. There's very few places I've ever been where I've walked in and there hasn't been anyone I've known or who've put me in touch prior to getting there.
Yeah. Do you find, is there similarities, differences between, cultures?
A lot of similarities, but it's, and we all, we go back to that adage that we're all one people, but we're so different. Is that consider, here I am in Melbourne, and if I'm working, with the mob, say down Lake Tyes Mission out in Gippsland there, the way that I approach a photo shoot, and because that mob there in Victoria would be a different approach than if I went to, say, the APY lands or the Central Desert. It's a total culture shift, because a lot of our different groups have diversified in the way that they adhere to cultural values and what they do, but everyone's still strong and connected in culture, but just in different ways.
And we have another question along this topic by Mark. How do you approach the duality of culture when you're photographing?
The duality of culture, that's an interesting terminology, isn't it? I'd even go beyond that. Duality is probably underselling the intricacies of our culture, because it is so diverse and so rich and so full of different. So imagine, we'll take Queensland as a really good guide. A lot of the mob in Queensland is you've got Aboriginal, Torres Strait, from the Solomon Islands, from a lot of the Pacific Islands. There's a lot of cultural merge up there, but still strong in Indigenous culture and Aboriginal culture. And there's so many different essences. So you can go into somebody's place where they're strong in Aboriginal culture, but the woman may be Aboriginal, the man may be Maori, for instance. So you then have duality in culture, but then down through the lines, the young one may have married a man or a woman from, say, Papua New Guinea, and culture diversifies again. So it's quite difficult to articulate in, I suppose, this short sort of period of time, how culture is so multi-layered.
Yep. Awesome. I think you've answered that.
In a long roundabout way, brother.
Yeah,
sometimes
absolutely.
I've got to reel back. But what I might do is because I've got a few images, but I might just flick through a few if that's all right with you, brother.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah.
A very brief explanation. This is a young man's camp up in far north Queensland, where they go out on a cattle station where they learn culture, they learn stock, they learn rouseabouting, they learn not only culture and where the land they're on, but also a lot of horsemanship skills and basically how to survive out on the land. And this program is just incredible. It gets in particular young offenders out of somewhere like Mount Isa, gets them back out of the country and learning culture again. So big shout out to you, Bob, up there. Now, we're talking about culture. One of my passions is not only my own culture, but there's also cultures around the world. And I've photographed many festivals and events, and this one here was such a powerful morning. It's called the Festival of Pacific Arts in the Solomon Islands. And every 4 years we have basically all the Indigenous groups from Rapa Nui to Hawaii, Guam, all come, and it's basically 2 weeks of cultural celebration and cultural sharing. And this here was the morning, and I'll never forget it because it was about a 2 a.m. start. We all went down to the beach, and this is the Solomon Islands welcoming us to country in their own special way. And I was very aware that I didn't want to get in the way of people, but the local fellow, the head guy, said, no, we need you to capture this and share with the world. Please join us, come out with us. So that's how our culture is now working. It's not separating anymore, it's involving us in ensuring that we capture it. And as photographers, our duty is to share this with the world. Incredible experience, bud.
So with all the traveling in these remote areas, we have a technical question. What is Wayne's most used camera body now for stills and for video?
Oh, there's nothing like the D850. It's just, it is one of those brilliant pieces of technology I've ever used. It's my go-to camera. So generally, when I go out on a particular shoot, I now carry 3 bodies. Generally, it's 2 850s with a 24 to 70 and a 70 to 200. You'll always see me in any photo. It's like they call me John Wayne out on Community. They reckon I look like a gunslinger with the 2 cameras hanging off each hip. And because I shoot now a lot of video, I either take the Z7 or now I'm finding the Z6 is brilliant for capturing video as well. So those, and that's generally a 24 to 70. My love is an old D800 I converted to infrared.
Oh, wow.
I love the thing. I still use it as much as I can. I have a fascination with sitting down in a place like Warrnambool and shooting, I know it sounds a little bit weird, seaweed. Watching kelp beds move, it's quite an experience, which I don't think many people would do. So that's the bizarreness of sometimes the way I look at the planet.
What, how important do you think technology is in getting a shot? Is it more about just the art of seeing, or does technology help? Yeah,
I love technology with a passion. I'm not very good technically, in all honesty. I know let's say the basics. I've been on shoots where some of my friends, their lighting systems for the 4 or 5 flashes with the way that they set it up is just incredible. I'm a very simple photographer. I know my settings. I know how to get the right shot. I'm more about seeing and feeling the shot than actually worrying about what the camera's going to do. And they've never failed me. There's such incredible piece of technology that they've travelled in, back of troopies, in dust storms. They've been in torrential cyclones and rain. They've done everything, and they've never failed me. So, and also loving my drones, but unfortunately Nikon doesn't make them yet.
Yeah, we won't talk about drones now. Let's talk about other ones.
We'll keep right out of that one.
Let's keep talking about your amazing photographs.
So let's go on to another one. Again, the movement. I listen when I'm shooting bungu or dance or ceremony. I generally don't see the shot. I hear the shot because a lot of our dances, a lot of our performances, a lot of sharing of culture is by sound. And I listen to the movement. I listen to the sound of whether it's clapsticks or didge, and you watch the feet, you watch the hands, in particular of men, and then the crescendo will build, and then all of a sudden there'll be a burst like this comes out. So long as you've got good AF happening, which, I mean, you look at this was 10 o'clock at night, and it just picked up the kicking up of dust beautifully.
So this was on the D850, Wayne?
Actually, no. This is probably the 800.
Oh wow.
800 or the 810. And funnily enough, as a bit of a side note, I'm in a show at the moment up at the Powerhouse Museum in Sydney. They've actually got all my old camera bodies, all in a glass case like a museum. It's absolutely hilarious.
I might check it out when I'm up there next week.
Oh, you heading up there?
Yeah, so it'll be fun.
Yeah. It's funny though, because as soon as I've still got the old D4 sitting in there and I still use it. I love the thing.
Fantastic. So a lot of this stuff I mean, your images are just so dynamic. So a lot of it, it's intuition, would you say? That when things are about to happen, it's about feeling the moment rather than just allowing, shooting and then hoping for the best.
100%. I sometimes feel like, and this may seem very, very odd to some people, that spiritually, when you're connected, is that you feel there's something happening. And so often I've been asked by people is how, like this shot here in particular, how were you standing in the water knowing that this shot was going to happen? I honestly had no idea. But the ladies, which are all up on the left, said, go down there, go further. And I'm walking into the water. I didn't want to get into the shot, They go, no, further. And then I was looking at it thinking, oh, you might be having a bit of a giggle at this. You got to see this fella go bum up and get soaked. And then I turned around and the barkers were coming in, the big traditional canoes, and I turned around, they're all smiling at me. And then the men started to jump. And it was just, it's intuition. And I feel really honoured that, that not only our own people, but Indigenous people across the world are really happy to share this with me, and eternally honoured that it happens.
It's amazing.
This one is really special to me, brother. I had to put this in because I was working in Bolivia, and I was working, and it's a very, very long story, so I'm really going to keep this short, but it was basically trying to show and document a lot of the remote communities that have been decimated by the cocaine wars. And a lot of these communities, which are high up in the Andes, weren't being self-sustainable because all the parents had been taken away to cultivate the crops, which left the kids with little or no skills of how to cook, how to fend for themselves, how to grow crops, how to tend animals. This organisation took me up there and I documented it of how they were trying to help the children. Now, this old lady, as we got there, again, I asked the young ones if I could take her photo, and she started to tell the story about how her husband of 80 years died not a few days before. And she was actually making the food for me and the children to eat. And she was crying at the same time, telling me the story. And naturally enough, not in English, it was being translated. And the power and the beautiful essence that she was still there offering me food and offering me somewhere to stay, even though that she'd lost everything, was a powerful experience I'll never forget.
Wow.
Yeah.
Such an emotive shot.
Yeah. Yeah, incredible people. Now we'll go on to this is a more positive type of image, again, sharing culture. The power and the beauty of who people are and to share was the reason I brought this one up. But I'll just keep going through a few, though, if that's all right.
I've got a few questions as well.
Please do. Yeah, if someone if you'd like to ask a question.
We've got a question from Tiffany. So Tiffany's a fan of your photographic art of women. So you have a way of capturing the feminine form that is respectful, and I can see that there is a lot of trust between you and the women you photograph. Now, what is the cultural conversation you have with women before you do these shoots?
Yeah, well, thank you for that. I appreciate that you do see that side of my art. It's called, a long time I named it the Lawana series, which means in Western Victorian language, beautiful woman. And I've always seen that women are the connectors to the land. They're connectors to culture. They have a beautiful essence of being able to connect all of us to country. And I started back in the old days with black and whites and basically photographing the body and photographing, say, the land, maybe a tree or a rock formation, then putting the two negatives in the old enlargers and creating those images and then hand toning them later on. Now with digital technology, it makes it a lot easier. But to answer your question is that to engage with a woman they always come to me. They generally come to me and talk to me about the beauty and the essence of connection. And they put a lot of trust in that I will photograph them in a way that is highly respectful, it's highly meaningful, and it's not gratuitous. And I've learned a lot over the years about how to respect that and how to do it. And if you look at my artwork, and we'll see some soon, is that you'll understand that there's a beautiful feeling when people connect and they do create art together. It's a very spiritual experience. I'm not sure if I've got one handy, brother. What I might do is I might just pop through a few. This one makes me laugh. I said, "Hey, brother, can I shoot you?" He goes, "As long as I can shoot you," and pulled out his Shanghai. So it was that one moment that it's just, view up in, also in far north Queensland.
Yeah.
This one makes me laugh. For all you football fanatics, or AFL fanatics, I should say, this is the homelands of West Coast Eagles superstar David Wirrapunda. His dad and his uncle, his family from this small community called Duraditchby, out in a very remote community, and I had to go out and document them, and they said, "Oh, we're going to go for a feed." And I said, "Great." I said, "But we're going to go over the other side." I go, "Yeah, where's the boat?" You go, "No, we don't need a boat." And what are you talking about? They go, "No, that's paper bark." So you just pull strips off the tree, throw it on the water, build it up to a certain thickness, and you just basically float down the waterways and do your bit of fishing and gathering. And I'll never forget, I looked, I said, "Come on, jump on." I said, "No." I said, I think you're going to probably need about another forest, enough trees to get me on those things, brother.
Looks a little bit dicey, doesn't it?
They're masters at it, absolute masters. So that there's on the river of the freshwater shark, actually, the bend where he sleeps under them reeds. Another beautiful story.
Yeah.
We're going to cross over to, I was invited by the Cubans to basically create a big exhibition in the Citadel de San Francisco in Havana. And we created this show to basically share our culture and our people. And I said, "Oh, listen, do you mind if we just go out and have a bit of a walk and have a chat to some people and grab some photos?" And this is my style of street documentary. And no, I didn't ask this fella for his permission, which sometimes I think when these shots come about, if you do ask permission, you lose the timing, the essence of what the photo could be. So I still feel uncomfortable photographing people without their knowledge, and it's no excuse, but I did go up and have a yarn to him and showed him the photo, and he couldn't stop smiling. It was a beautiful moment.
Yeah, just a question here from one of the participants regarding, I guess, capturing the action shots. Going back to that shot of the guys at the beach. Now, what Werner wants to know was that a single shot, or do you use continuous mode? Because you're shooting with D850s, fairly quick as far as the number of frames per second. But are you just waiting for the moment, or are you just hoping that out of a series of maybe 10 frames, you capture the frame?
Yeah, that's Michelle Grace Hunter, who is also going to be a part of this series, will attest to many years ago of how I shoot. And I'll be really honest. This is what I do, is that I don't shoot RAW. I shoot JPEGs, and I know I can hear the gasps of despair coming through Zoom. I am learning now. I am shooting a lot more RAW, but in the old days, I shot JPEGs. I didn't see the point of RAW. It slowed my workflow down.
Yeah.
We were at a festival one day, and there was a pack of photographers, mainly press photographers there. And we were all gathered, and I talked to them about cultural protocols of some of the things they could and couldn't shoot, and off they went. Dance, Bungle come up, they were dancing, everyone went crazy. It was a beautiful moment. And one of the senior photographers come down and he says, Wayne, he says, I noticed that we'd all taken a continuous, we're doing bursts, 10, 15, 20 frames to your one. I said, yeah, how many shots did you probably shoot? I said, oh, probably 400 to 500. He said, we shot 4,000 to 5,000. And I said, yeah, mate. I said, but I listen and watch and I know. And it just, of course you're missing shots, but also I believe that if you're looking and listening, you can get that shot without having to do 5,000 frames, because I'm too lazy to go through 5,000 photos, brother.
Yeah, I mean, it comes back down to the way you shoot, I guess, that, preempting the moment and, and feeling it as opposed to just, spraying and praying, as they say.
Yeah, very true, very true. It's like you said, we're all different and we're all unique, and I love to watch other people shoot. It's quite enlightening. Again, the duplicity of culture here. We've got these beautiful painted up girls, but you've got the earrings and you've got the watches and you've got the necklaces, and just stunningly beautiful. You got the earphones in, listening to modern music, ready to go out and dance traditionally. I love those type of photos.
Once again,
country is a big thing, connection to country. And yes, this is a single shot out in up towards Woomera. I was just fortunate I was out there actually creating a show earlier this year. And there's this single tree out there. The sun was coming through, the light was behind. I jumped out, ran across this, it was a long run for me. And I saw this beautiful light behind this tree, and then I took the shot and it looked gorgeous. But after I'd met the ladies later on, and we were talking about connection and the roots to culture and how we grow from the earth, through the earth into the sky, it allowed me to create this duplicitous image of two images joined to one to show that what could be up could be down. And I have a real passion for non-normal landscapes. I just love the beauty.
That's an amazing.
And as you say, you're the master of light, brother, and all I see photography is light. There's no, if you find the light,
it's everything.
You run with it, don't you?
It's everything.
Could you hold for 1 second? I just need to grab a drink. I'm a little bit dry.
Yeah,
sorry about
absolutely.
that.
Absolutely.
1 second.
Yeah, and it's a good opportunity for getting some more questions in. So people out there wanting to know a little bit more about how Wayne approaches certain things. Great.
Rocco, I want to know how close the crocodiles got to Wayne when he was standing in the water.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, some amazing stuff, isn't there?
What did he call them? The traditional canoes, I think he called them.
Traditional canoes, yes.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Oh, sorry about that, guys. I should have been pre-prepared. I take everything out bullshit at home. I've got nothing.
Yeah. Talk to us a little bit more about your landscapes. Yeah, exactly right. Which, so your landscapes just have this real raw kind of earthy, appearance to them, and they draw you in, and you almost feel like you're there. I mean, how much post-production do you actually do? Is it part of your thing, or is it more about the light and what you've captured?
Yeah, I will be, again, very honest. I am not a landscape photographer. I am far, far from it. I do not have the patience. I highly admire all you incredible landscape photographers who can spend so much time and effort and patience to capture what you do. I would consider myself more as a gun and run photographer. Is that a lot of the time, in particular, working on whether it's a festival or working with community, everything evolves as you go, and you've got to go with it. And all of a sudden, you could be out shooting something, and you'll see this gorgeous sunrise or sunset, or you'll see a large parente or a big lizard running across the sand. You chase the moment as you go. As I mentioned to you earlier, is that I am illiterate in Photoshop. I have very, very basic knowledge of how to use it. I am trying, and I've learned during COVID that, you know, I've had to practice a little bit more, I will make every attempt, but it's the rawness of out on community. It's the incredible things that community will take you out and show you that you would have missed. We were talking about seasons before, and they will take you out and go, the old man will point you in a certain direction and it'll look like desert. But then over the small ridge, all of a sudden there's a billabong, a water hole, where the animals have gathered. All of a sudden there's these beautiful textures around the water hole. It's an incredible experience to be able to see, to feel land more than see it, if that makes sense.
You certainly get that sense when you look at your landscape pictures. It's about how they make you feel, I guess, about a specific spot, you know, so amazing.
It's right. How you feel may be different than how I felt when I was there, but it is the feeling of being there, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you find that yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you know, I guess as photographers, we try to convey, you know, what we captured at the time, but sometimes it's a little bit difficult. But what I love the most about photography is that it's open to interpretation, and there is no right or wrong. And if you can evoke an emotion in an image, well, you know, you're doing something good, you know, and you know, we all react to things differently. So, yeah, and it's an amazing medium, I think.
Oh, it is. I feel eternally blessed that being able to do it. This is in response, actually. This is we were talking about that Luana series. We call them, you know, the art nudes. This is one of them. This is actually one of my latest ones. This is actually down here in Melbourne. We have what's called the Koori Heritage Trust Art Awards, and basically it's photographing, you know, two different women, two different body shapes, incorporating two different textures of land and art, and then putting them together. This is in all honesty, this is my most advanced Photoshop, which involved 3 separate layers. I got to 3 and totally got confused about what I was meant to be doing. And
that's amazing.
I really enjoyed it because the white you see is actually just the palm fronds that have gone a little bit weird. Yeah. That's about the technical side of it. So this was basically titled "The Warriors of COVID." It was the two spirits battling each other during the virus. But as you were talking, you'd taken a series of shots during COVID, which meant a lot to you too, didn't it?
Yeah, I did. As I mentioned earlier today to you, photographing the commission flats out of my window because, you know, we couldn't go anywhere. And this project, I mean, considering what was happening inside with quarantine and all that sort of stuff, and just observing the light in different times of day and how the clouds, you know, when sun gave different meanings to what was going on, not only inside but outside as well. You know, birds flying around, you know, and you know, symbols of freedom, and it was just crazy, and it was probably one of the most satisfying things that I've done as a personal project. So yeah, it just kind of, COVID's been weird because it's pushed my creativity in a certain direction, which I thought I'd never go, and I'm sure it's done the same to you with what we're seeing here on the screen, and you know, that ability to be able to explore and try something different. I think that's always a good thing for an artist.
It is. It's evolution. If we don't evolve, we become stale, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Now this one I brought up in particular because, again, it'll come back to, you know, the duplicity or duality of culture. And this was taken down just south of here, halfway towards Geelong, where they're introducing, you know, ceremony back into community for in particular our young ones to relearn culture and connection of who we are. And a good friend of mine, he's just works tirelessly to encourage more urban Aboriginal people to connect back to country. But the importance of this shot is this young Aboriginal girl, she'd lost both her legs, and now, you know, she has the mechanical or the robotic legs, but she still gets out on Boongal, out on dance ground, and she still performs, and she still feels extremely proud of who she is and what she does. And everyone in the community we're just in awe of not only her, but a lot of our other young ones that are now engaging back in culture. And photography has allowed me to capture and share this.
Wow.
The bushfires, we all remember them.
Yeah.
That little thing that happened at the beginning of the year, that, you know, this madness has sort of pushed a lot of it into the background. But yeah, I went out and basically drove. This is my own personal project, really, to work with communities, because the effect it had on Aboriginal communities was a little bit different than what it was with non-Indigenous communities. Because what had happened during these fires, that apart from the loss of, you know, land and bush, is that people forget the animals are our totems. Now, totems are integral to who we are and our connection to not only the land, but to culture. And
Yep.
it devastated a lot of our cultural totems through a lot of different communities. So when I was out and I saw these shots and the devastation, but also that slight bit of colour that was still unburnt, this was one of my sort of creations that I found, and it meant a lot. It meant a lot to show people about, you know, through devastation, there is still the living essence of who we are.
Yeah, amazing.
So again, I'll just skip through a few of these, but, you know, a lot of it is, you know, modern contemporary. You know, this is a fashion parade, celebrate culture. I love footy. I love footy out on country. I love the young ones painted up, ready for the shoot with Jimmy Nelson, and the kids are kicking around football. It was just that funny moment that the ball would bounce, he jumped, and I was there to capture it. It was purely just watching.
Yeah.
This one's an important photo because this actually relates back to one of the earlier questions about I generally only show positive images. I won't mention this old fella's name, but he's a well-renowned Aboriginal artist from one of our communities. His artwork sells for a considerable amount, but this is where he lives along with two other men. And this shows the harsh living conditions a lot of our communities do suffer. No running water, there's no windows or doors, there's no electricity. And as much as his art can sell for a lot of money, he still lives in these type of conditions. Now, the reason I put this in tonight's presentation is to show that, yeah, photography can be such a powerful initiator, something that can get us discussing who, what, how, why, when, and where. And I'll leave that up to people to, you know, there's a long conversation about why, but I wanted to throw this into the mix to just, not even balance, but to show that I do have these images.
Yeah.
Now we talk about by chance photos. I never set portraits up. I'm not a portrait photographer as well. Not like you, brother, where, I mean, I admire how you capture portraits of people. It's an incredible skill. This here was a friend of mine, side of stage, ready to get up and perform. He just happened to be standing under a downlight in the Sydney Convention Centre. I said, "Hey, brother, stay there for a second." He goes, "What?" I said, No, don't move. And that's the shot. So the opportunities are there. You just got to continue to look and watch the light. And I personally, it's one of my favourites. I love it.
Yeah, it's such mystery in the eyes that you can't see, and so much story there.
David's got a lot of stories, brother. He's an incredible man. You know, this was the Jimmy Nelson shoot. If you ever see Jimmy Nelson's book, it's a very staged shot. You know, the community are all sitting in the dance group are sitting in the water, whereas I was out there, the kids were jumping off the cliffs, basically jumping on me. And I tried to show you the vibrance and the fun of our kids. The beautiful, beautiful colours.
Yeah, incredible.
I don't use polarizers as a rule.
Yeah.
The colours we have in Australia are so vibrant.
Yeah. Just on that note of colours and cameras, got another question here. regarding your choice of camera, the D850s, the D800s, the D810s, have you ever considered maybe shooting anything faster, like a D5 or a D4, as far as speed? There was a question by Javier.
Speed is not something I need. I do have, I did buy a D4 and still love it. It's quite an interesting camera, but for some reason the 850 it suits me. It's like having a connection with something that I find it so easy to use. It's so I can pick it up in the dark, I can shoot with it, and I know it won't fail me. I've had a question recently where another brand has approached me and basically suggests that we have a comparable, if not superior, camera. And I said, listen, no doubt you have. A good mate of mine, Craig Newell, incredible photographer here in Melbourne, shoots Canon. He's always given me grief. He's always, come to the other side, brother. I said, no. No. You'll never get me there. And I love the advancement of technology, I really do. But if you have a product that does everything you need it to do easily and intuitively, I don't see the reason to change.
Absolutely.
Again, that's the way that I operate.
And you get to the point where
we got here. Sorry, mate. Yeah.
Right. That's all right. The camera becomes an extension of, I guess, what you're thinking. And once you reach that point, I mean, it's awesome. So why would you change and relearn muscle memory and all that sort of stuff? Unless there's a reason to. But once you're happy and you're comfortable, that's it. That's the ultimate goal, I think.
It is an awesome feeling, isn't it? Where you can pick something up. Know that it's going to do what it needs to do, and not have to worry about it because it's the risk of failure. Is it going to do? I personally can't risk that with what I do.
Yeah.
Again, not so much a portrait. Sitting in a radio station, I said, brother, look up. The light's perfect, and it just, it just took the colour out. Headphones on, looking down the barrel. He looks so serious, but he's one of the funniest men you'll ever meet. and that's what a lot of people miss in our culture is the humour is incredible.
Yeah.
The very old shot, this is probably 20, 25 years old, old man up in Laura Festival. The same thing is our connection now. I shoot, but I listen to the story. So I listened to the old lady when she was telling this young one the story of why he was being painted up, the story of his ancestors, his clan groups. And sometimes, I'll be honest, I forget that I'm there to actually take a shot. I've got to go, oh, damn, I've actually got to take this photo and stop listening to the stories.
Fascinating.
Yeah, that off-the-cuff shot, you turn around and here's the dogs having a cup of tea, sitting out in the bush. And I had put my daughter in. My daughter, she's in my new book. This is the photo that's in the book. So she's learning culture by everybody else. This is up at the Three Rivers Festival in Echuca, where Auntie Neva painted her up and gave her a new headdress. And she went out and danced with the rest of the mob. We have such an inclusive culture and non-judgmental when it comes to this type of thing. So
yeah.
Now landscapes. We talk about landscapes. This is not a drone shot. This is out of a helicopter. Up launching the Indigenous television station NITV, and I got on well with the chopper pilot. I said, brother, can you just take me out for a bit of a whirl? And yeah, we'll go up to the Salt Lakes. And I said, look at that beautiful love heart. And he goes, what are you talking about? I said, down there, just tilt the chopper a little bit. So we tilted it. Now this is my wife's Valentine's shot. So I had to put that one in too now.
It's beautiful.
Also, you don't need to show faces, I tend to find. There's a lot of the stories in particular, with hands and feet. The interpretation of an image is incredible. And how we interpret it. What does it mean? What, sometimes I won't even give the answer to why it was shot. I leave that up to the person to go, well, it could mean this.
Yeah, absolutely. We're kind of losing you in your background now, Wayne. You have this background.
Sorry, give me 1 second.
A little bit dark. It looks great. It's very mysterious. You're kind of blending in. There you are.
I'm becoming a little bit more of a black fella, brother.
Yeah. To the point you've disappeared into the background.
You've got to tell me to smile. Again, this was in the Solomon Islands. Underneath cover, the light was perfect, just watching. And generally these photos, it's not so much asking when you see it, it's looking and the nod. You know, the nod when you look at somebody to sort of get that affirmation of yes or no?
Yeah.
So this was the nod. He looked at me, I gave him a nod and he gave it back, and then that was the shot. So there's different ways of recognising people.
Yeah.
Ceremony festivals in Mexico. I was over there as a cultural ambassador, and just incredible stories and journey. Indigenous dancer, ballerina. I tried to create a different portfolio for her that would stand out to when she went into performances or to casting agents. I said, let's do something different. So we incorporated culture in the landscape, and it certainly worked.
Yeah, absolutely. Just on that note, where you're sort of trying different creative things, I have a question here from Mark. Now, Mark would like to know if there's a shot that you're chasing and what challenges remains to you that you'd love to overcome.
A shot that I want to get, or?
Yeah, a shot you're chasing, an idea perhaps, or?
Oh, bro, I've got so many. I really feel like I've been doing this for so long, but I feel like I'm in the infancy of my career. I think there's so much out there that I haven't even touched yet. I'd love one day, and I'll be honest, I've been commissioned by a major fashion label, which I can't mention at the moment. It's an international fashion label. They're getting me to create a campaign for them. And they're giving me the latitude to develop up a really funky new series of shots, which they're going to be very different. It's going to be a different scenario for me, because I will then have to take a crew with me. I generally shoot purely by myself. I rarely shoot with anybody else. And I've got to learn to play in the schoolyard with everybody else to become a little bit better. So I suppose what shot am I looking for? I could spend the rest of my life traveling the world, working with different Indigenous cultures and recording their stories and creating opportunities in particular for other Indigenous photographers around the world to come together as a collective, to share their stories through the beautiful art of photography. So I know that probably doesn't answer it direct, but there's a million shots that I want to get. It's very hard to define one.
Yeah, it's hard because you always think that tomorrow you'll take the best shot, and then once you've taken the shot, there's always a better shot, and there's one after that,
It is, isn't it?
And I think that's important to always wanting to chase and evolve. I guess it's not about never being content, because you're content when you take the shot, but I guess it's chasing that constant evolution that makes you who you are, Wayne, and that's awesome.
What about you, brother? What about you? What's your shot that you would always, something you wanted?
For me, I mean, it pretty much comes down to, I don't know. I don't think there is a shot, because for me, like it's a feeling you get when you take a shot. It either evokes something in me and it's special to me. And there's probably a handful of shots in my career that I've taken, even at weddings or portraits where, I think back now and go, wow, that was an amazing moment for me, taking the picture because I know what that picture meant to the person. But I don't know, for me, I kind of, I build on those experiences, and it's a constant evolution. There isn't, I've come to realize that it's about enjoying the journey that we're on, as opposed to just realizing the destination, the shot, the ultimate, you know. Yeah, so journey's good. The journey's good, and yeah, but your journey's amazing. You know, the cultural aspect of what you do as far as documenting these communities, then these incredible creative landscapes, and combining, you know, the human form with the textures of the land, and it's just mind-boggling. You know, it's I'd love to be in your head and the way you think, because it's incredible. It's almost like different personalities coming out and wanting to do different things, and that's amazing.
Oh, bro, please don't get in my head. It's there's too many other people in there at the moment. Yeah, that's and again, I do appreciate that, because I don't think that, I don't feel that, because it's just a natural. I see the world as such a beautiful place with so many different stories that I just sit there. I love to play. That's all it is. You know, whether it's creating, like you said, a piece of art and working with other artists, or talking to you and talking to everybody out there about our experiences, is the journey is just so incredible. And the beautiful thing is coming back to it in years to come. You know, I've photographed people where they've come back and said, oh, now you photographed me as a young one, and now I've got kids, and you just photographed them doing what I was doing when you photographed them. And you start to think of that beautiful journey, and you go, wow, that's a beautiful sentiment, that you form a bond with people through the camera. And a lot of the time, I tend to find you can't be an introvert. You need to you need to be open.
Absolutely.
So I'll pop through a few more.
Because we're going to wrap it up soon. So if there's any more questions, we'd love to hear them. But in the meantime, as you're going through some of these, your last project, which you almost finished, the book, talk to us a little bit more about that, because that's being published at the moment. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Rod. Yeah, after 30 years of doing everybody else's books, I've done how many books I've done over the years with, you know, people utilising my photos. I had a publisher, a friend of mine, Marsha Langton, who's done her own series of books. So Wayne, you really do need to share your images. You need to share the stories and the images of who contemporary Indigenous Australians are. And fortunately enough, the publishers come to me and said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to tell the real story of who we are, and not through just traditional imaging, but through everything from where we've got scientists, we've got brain surgeons, heart surgeons, we've got lawyers, teachers, principals, we've got business owners throughout the country that are doing incredible things. So I created a book called Culture is Life, because culture is life to us. It means everything. And this book, I've got the only copy so far. It came to me the other day, and it's not your typical photographic book. It's not that coffee table, big glossy, what you come to expect. It's more of a small book which shows the reality of our people and the stories behind them and the experiences behind the imaging and where we were at that particular time. So Culture is Life is, I'm launching it on 26th of January. Someone keeps telling me it's some significant date. I'm just quite haven't got my head around that. It was a bit of a stir up that I said to the publishers, seriously, we've got to launch it on January 26th, and it'll get people talking. Absolutely. So it will be out soon through Hardy Grant Publishing. It's on Amazon and places, and it's a fantastic project, and I really hope it does show people the difference of who we are.
Do you have a picture of the front cover so people can recognise it in their favourite bookshops when they go out? And
yeah,
or do you have
I did take a photo. Is that my? No, sorry, I had it and I lost it.
It's on your website, so people will be able to see it.
Yeah, just Aboriginal.photography. It's all the links are there for that, and also we just launched a wine label, an Aboriginal wine label, where my art's featuring on the front of that. Then next year, for all you mob that are up in Sydney at Vivid Festival, you're going to see all the beautiful photos scrolling across the Sydney Harbour Bridge. So if you recognise some of the photos from tonight, you'll probably see them up on the bridge next year as well.
Yeah, perhaps we can organise a link to your book in the email that we send out. I think that'll be great.
Wonderful. Thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Rocco, I'll send that. That's fine.
Yeah, you're going to do that?
Yep.
Awesome.
Thanks, Chris.
Which is good. Yeah, so Chris has got that sorted. So, mate, we could talk all night and literally for days on end, because you're just a fascinating human being, you know, and an incredible artist. And we really want to thank you for sharing your art with us tonight. And yeah, look forward to catching up again in the future and finding out about your new adventures.
Rocco, it has been an absolute delight to speak to you, brother. It's sort of like a kindred spirit about the way that we look at these things, and not only thank you, but Nikon and all the team there that worked so hard to set these up to share, you know, all the experience of all the other different photographers and the way that we go about this. This is how we connect, and any time I can ever help, I look forward to it. We're definitely going to have to do it in person one day, and I think maybe on some beautiful deserted island, and we'll work it out.
Yeah, definitely, absolutely. Once again, thank you, and yeah, there's no more questions. So we want to thank everyone for tuning in, and this will be available, as Chris said, on our YouTube channel within about a week. Usually, I think that's the go, but. You'll be getting an email from Nikon, is that right, Chris? And with all the details?
Yeah, very much so. An email will come through tonight, and then you'll get a second one within a week, which will be the link to the YouTube viewing of tonight's show.
Yeah, awesome.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate all your help, brother.
No, thanks, Wayne. It was lovely talking to you, and I look forward to spending that night, campfire, cup of tea or something like that. Who knows? But listening to more stories.
Absolutely.
It's been amazing.
We will do that. Thank you again.
Yeah.
Thanks, Wayne.
Just on that too, Wayne, some wonderful comments that are in the chat as well. So all very pleasing comments, and I can take a copy of those for you. But Rocco, I wanted to also thank you. It is and a very interesting and can be a tough job trying to come up with questions and keeping a flow of a presentation going. Thankfully, Wayne was on top of it tonight and absolutely nailed that part of it. So making your job a little bit easier. But I want to thank you for giving up your time, Rocco. It's amazing.
It was a pleasure, absolute pleasure. So, and thanks, Wayne. Thanks for sharing. Yeah, it's incredible work, and can't wait to see what else you do in the future. So, yeah, look forward to it. Bigger and better always. But I'm looking forward to your book. So that'll be fun.
Thank you, everybody.
Wonderful. Cheers. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you very much, Wayne. Take care and have a good night.